Avenged Sevenfold's The Stage. This was quite an unusual release, seeing that no one knew about the fact that it actually got released. They pretty much were showing the Death Bat around the world. The Death Bat was projected onto buildings like Big Ben in London, the Eiffel Tower in Paris, among other buildings scattered around the world. People didn't really think much about this. They just kind of thought people and fans were doing this. Also, they did release a single, which was The Stage, but there was nothing about an album or the fact that they were even working on an album. They got a new record label. They gave up with Warner Brothers, and they were going to do a live performance for everyone on top of the building Capitol Records. After the performance was done, it was announced, this is it, Avenged Sevenfold The Stage album released worldwide. And I thought this is not going to be fully capable because no one knows about the release. They need to still ship everything out. But lo and behold, the following day, the album was in stores everywhere. So no stores leaked it and no media leaked it. And in today's society where media is all over the place and follows and stalks every single person, it's amazing that they actually pulled it off. They suffered a bit, obviously because no one knew that Avenged Sevenfold actually released another album. So there was a bit of a problem with the fact that sales were pretty poor, just because no one was buying it, because no one realised that the album was in fact out. So, but there's a new drummer in this album. You have Brooks Wackerman replacing Aaron Alj. And Brooks is said to be a fan of the Rev and be quite similar in style to the Rev. And following from Hail to the King, which got a bit of a backlash for being a bit too simplistic, it's kind of interesting to see where they're going, because since the Rev passed, Hail to the King was very simplistic. Fans were considering, is this it for Avenged Sevenfold? Will they not be able to do anything on that same level as they've done in the past? Only time will tell. Now, here we are with The Stage. So, let's not waste any more time. Let's get into it with the first track, The Stage. So The Stage starts as a typical Avenged Sevenfold kind of start. It starts with keyboards, and it's quite haunting. It's just kind of haunting. It lasts a while. There's some kind of digital effects kind of thrown in as it progresses. It's not like critical acclaim. It's a lot more like a haunted carnival kind of sound that they're going for. As things fade out with the effects, Sinister Gates comes in on the guitar and plays a pretty nice riff. It's quite nice, 200 tapping I think he's doing. And as it goes, the drums start coming in. He does a bit of, Sinister does a bit of fiddles. As other people keep joining in, you eventually get the bass, and then you get the rhythm coming in, just doing big, long churns on the guitar, having it sound out. And then eventually everyone kind of comes in, and everyone's kind of galloping along with the song. Sinister's still doing that 200 tapping, I think, run through. And then before the kind of vocals come in, Sinister does the typical showing off style of doing bends and pulls on the whammy and everything, and just kind of goes kind of crazy with it. So it's quite big and got a fair bit heft to it. Then Matt comes in. The singing style here for Matt, it's quite fast paced compared to his usual workings. He goes at a fairly rapid pace. So he keeps going at this kind of pace, a bit of a flow. Sinister's not doing anything overly complicated. It's just kind of the kind of power chords with a good rhythm to it. There is backing vocals along with Matt, So it is still Matt, but obviously live. It's covered by Johnny Christ, I believe. But the backing vocal, it gets a bit kind of more deeper and kind of in the background, and then as Matt kind of comes back in with the more upfront presence with his quick paced singing. It's quite a bit of a feat if you kind of listen to it live. It seems a bit of a struggle for Matt because it does kind of go at a fair, decent pace. The pre-chorus, Sinister again does some kind of lead that leads you into it, as that faded vocal style of Matt kind of goes. The chorus is very open, very kind of slow in its pace with the vocals and the guitar as well. Sinister does a lead, but it's very kind of slow paced. And then it goes back into the same verse. The solo, I kind of say there's two parts to it. The first part, it's fairly quick and everything. It's good, and it does have its holds at times, but it's more kind of fast and everything with holds to kind of break it up a bit. But there's nothing kind of amazingly catchy or kind of memorable and everything. If you listen to it enough, it does become memorable, but it's not really a standout. I say the standout is the second part where everything kind of breaks down. And it's a very kind of clean guitar kind of rhythm going on for a while. And then eventually Sin comes back with a melodic lead solo with holds and bends, and then it kind of soars as it progresses, and then it doesn't really go into shred, but he does kind of up the pace, but it's more kind of holds and everything. And then as that kind of goes, Matt comes back in with the vocals. It's going very smoothly. He's singing, it goes very smoothly. It's clean, it's not quick. So it goes like that, but then eventually Matt comes in with a bit more speed, a bit more heft to his voice, and Sinister underneath is actually doing, I don't know if it's sweep picking, a very fast playing style, basically, underneath him. And that lasts a while, and then it starts getting to the end of the song with a fade out with Sinister Gates on the guitar. The song is quite lyrically intense. There's a fair bit to it. So how throughout history and even today, we always need war, and then after war is done, we say it was terrible, let's not do it again, so we go and do it yet again, and we never learn. War is a terrible thing, but we keep doing it all throughout the ages, but we always hate it and say how much of a nightmare it is, but we carry it on and we never learn. Another thing is as we watch as outsiders, we also kind of actually, in a sick way, enjoy war and get a bit of a thrill about it, and we enjoy seeing war and guns and death and brutality, and it's kind of sick. And also that we are controlled by our government, but the person that controls government is death itself, because government, in a kind of big, bold way, as Avenged Sevenfold kind of stating, government controls our lives, and they do kind of end up killing us because they're the ones who control who goes to war and everything, and they have to do it. It's their job, and they die out there. It's because they were told to by government. It's a very big song. There's probably way more to it. I probably haven't even explained it. I may have misinterpreted a few things. It's a very bold song and a very big opener. And seeing that this was the single, it's not radio friendly in the slightest. It's a very long song. It's very intense. And yeah, that's basically it. It lasts, I think, around 8 minutes. It's a fair decent length to it. So that's it for the stage. Next track is going to be Paradigm. So Paradigm starts pretty slow, not actually that much really going on. The part where it starts actually getting quite involved is the actual verse. It's a weird verse because all the musicians are going at quite a rapid pace. Everything is very muddy, going quite quickly. But the vocals from Matt are also quite muddy. But he's singing very slow and very kind of laid back. It's very slow, it's very laid back, while all the musicians underneath him are actually going at a fair rapid pace. But it's thick, so it's not really tinny to overbear what actually Matt's doing. So it both kind of fits together quite well. It was unusual my first listen to it because of that contrast. Matt's being very kind of open and slow, and then the music is also low, but it's still going quite quickly. When Matt takes a break in the riff, so just to get a breath or so, Sinister does a very creepy, very subtle lead, which is like holds, and it's very kind of haunting, and it's not in the background so much as you can't hear it, but it is very hauntingly in there, and it's just a long hold, and then he comes back in. And Matt's voice does a fade out effect before it gets into the chorus. The chorus is actually quite energetic, quite upbeat, and quite fun as well. It's very upbeat, it's very open, it's very catchy. Matt's voice soars at times throughout, which would be very enjoyable to listen to. Going back into the second verse, as the chorus ends, you get a bit of a scream from Matt that leads back into that verse again. You get the same thing, and back to the chorus, and then scream out. Sinister's solo, he actually does a lead leading up to his actual lead solo, so he actually introduces himself. It's not really much the lead to it, but it's still a lead. But as it gets in to a solo, Sin actually kind of cuts off, and then you get a few kind of rapid drum beats from Brooks, and then Sinister comes in absolutely piercing his all balls. It's very, very aggressive, very sharp, holds and bends on the whammies, and he just holds it, and then he's just bending and then bending and then bending and then bending over and over and over again, and then he slowly kind of creepily fades to the background, and then he comes to the foreground for that kind of more shreddy outro, and then he finishes, and then it goes back to Matt, who does two vocal parts. There's the scream part where he just goes ah, and he does it in a scream, proper screamo type style, but it's in the background while Matt does the lead actual vocal work over the top of that, which is very open, flows very nicely. It's very nice to the ears. The scream does keep kind of going while Matt's going, but the scream doesn't last the whole time. It'll last for a while, then it will stop, and then he'll kind of come back in and do it again. But because it's kind of faded in the background, it's not just which sounds kind of weird because it's in the background, and then he kind of projects the scream quite well. It's actually quite subtle and fits kind of well in. It's kind of like a musical instrument, the way he kind of does it. So it's not like an actual vocal line. It's just an effect, really, to kind of give more to that song, as well as his vocal performance in the upfront, which is the only vocal performance, really, his actual singing. And then it goes back into the chorus, and then you get to the end of the song. The song's shorter, it's just 4 minutes 19. And then we get into the next track, Sunny Disposition. Now, Sunny Disposition is quite a weird track, be it why I actually didn't like this album the first time round. I thought it was actually kind of crap. But Sunny Disposition, the riff is sung very weird. There's a weird style to the way Matt sings this, and a weird effect. And the first part of the riff as well, I don't know if it's guitar, but if it is, there's a really, really weird tone and effect going through it. It's very bright and not really chirpy, I would say. It's well, the album, the stage, is going for a sci-fi feel, and that is kind of what you get. Matt's voice sounds unbelievably open, like he is just in such a massive room, and it's just kind of echoing, but it's not a typical echo. There is something to it. It is really, really weird, and that's a big thing about this album. I don't think there's anything like this. This is just new territory completely. It's so weird. But yeah, basically, as I say, his voice is very, very open. It's he's eerily kind of singing it, kind of like a trance kind of thing, as he kind of actually sings it, and then that open kind of sci-fi effect with the kind of echo kind of thing. Just adds way more to the kind of eerie, ghostly sci-fi effect that I think he's going for. Now, the guitar, if it is actually the guitar, is very bright and, again, just unusual, and I haven't really heard anything like this again. So I don't know if it's another instrument or like an effect, a computer effect, something like that. It could be guitar, I'm not sure. But it's not beefy or anything like that. It is kind of bright, but it's not bright as in kind of angelic in any type of way. It's kind of what you would describe as a sci-fi kind of alien-y sounding guitar kind of tone, if I had to kind of explain it with not really having anything to really go on, which is why this album, I feared reviewing it, because it's so difficult to review something so unusual. There's two parts to the verse, though. The second part, the proper guitars kind of come in with the typical Avenged Sevenfold heaviness, heft to it. And then that goes with the typical Matt's vocal style that he's been doing for a while now. And then it starts ramping up in speed to the typical Avenged Sevenfold style, ramp speed and everything. And then it kind of slows down leading into the chorus. The chorus there, they bring horns into it, and the music is dun 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 dun. So it's got a kind of steady beat to it, and then the horns bun dun 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 dun. The horns is a nice entry in because Avenged Sevenfold, they don't have an actual horn player, so kind of just putting it in just gives it a bit more levity and a bit more, size and grandness to the overall song. Matt's voice again is quite eerie. My favourite part in this is kind of when he says false alarm. His voice gets so kind of floaty and ghostly as he kind of says that. It's very nicely done, and because it's so ghostly and everything, he keeps it very, very clean. It's very nicely done. The solo is a bit more of the kind of bombastic Sinister Gate solo. A lot of speed. Obviously, Sinister is not just all about speed. There is holds there, and making it kind of soar as he does it as well. But there is a lot of speed and a lot of shred and goodness knows sweet picks and all that kind of shred all over the place, which he's fully capable of. I don't think he really has a problem doing it. And then the holds, as I say, a typical hold, or maybe more of a hold that kind of soars. And then at the end, he does the kind of typical rhythm, but it shreds. So da-da-da-da, hold, da-da-da-da, hold. So it's got a bit of a kind of rhythm beat to it. And then it goes back to Matt, which just goes back into that really eerie kind of ghostly kind of echoey sound, which is very sci-fi in their sound as well. Then it gets back to the chorus, and then you get to the end of the song, leading to the next track, God Damn. So Goddamn, we would probably say, is the most accessible song. It's 3 minutes 42, and it's basically as typical of Avenged Sevenfold you're going to get on this album, because this album is very diverse to what they've done previously. So you start with thunderous guitar and drums, the typical Avenged Sevenfold sound, but that'll just last for a while, so it's dun 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 dun. And then under that, you have a very clean actual guitar lead and melody going on. And then it comes back in with the thundering drums and the guitars, very beefy in sound. But you can still hear that kind of melodic rhythm is still going underneath it. And then as it stops again, that melodic melody still going. Giving good contrast, because you get the bombastic elements and then you get the very calm elements both going at the same time. And then at the pause, it's still the melody going. Very kind of unusual, but you get the bombastic and you also get the melody kind of both at the same time. It's quite weird. The melody doesn't last too long though, because as the song kind of comes in, Matt comes in with an "oh," and the whole band just goes absolutely unbelievably ballistic. It's just so heavy, so brutal and bombastic, everyone going. And then it's all the kind of chorus, and then you get the kind of da-na-na-na-na kind of more technical lead. And then you get the proper lead and the rhythm, where it seems a bit kind of more fast-paced, a bit shreddish to a degree. Then you get back to the da-da-da-da kind of rhythm, and then da-na-na-na-na-na. Then the kind of more sped, shreddy part that lasts a fair bit longer before Matt then comes in. And then as Matt comes in, you still get that big, beefy, punching, fat sound that it was going in that introduction with the speedy leads part. Matt's voice is the typical kind of singing style of Matt Shadows. It's the very powerful, upfront and open style that Matt goes for. The chorus is kind of where the weirdness is, because it kind of slowed down, and the guitars, it goes kind of bright, and then Matt's voice kind of dances around. There's no effect on his voice, but it's a weird, unusual singing style from Matt that we haven't really heard before. Then you get back into the typical, the same verse, then back to the chorus. The solo here is where it goes to the sci-fi element again. Sin has a very weird effect put on. It seems to be a lot of reverb. Seems to be a lot of feedback, but it's a very kind of piercing feedback he's getting, giving it that kind of sci-fi sound. So it's very, very piercing, and got a bit of an openness to it, echo, and it's very bright and everything, as he does all the holds and everything to kind of get across that kind of effect and everything of a kind of alien-y sci-fi feel. And then at the end, it goes into the more kind of typical guitar sound of a bit of a shred, and then it leaves. Then for some reason we go Mexican. For some reason. It sounds Mexican to me, at least. It's kind of acoustic. Not saying acoustic is Mexican sounding all of the time, but it's got a bit of a kind of Mexican kind of feel to it, I would say. To me, at least. But yeah, it goes acoustic. Very weird. And Matt sings along the top of it in a very kind of nice melodic kind of way. Not melodic, just open, not that powerful punching stuff that Matt has been known for. It's the more kind of open Matt with the acoustic playing. And the guitars kind of come back in, and then you get back into that chorus and everything. But it's a bit different because you get a bit more brutality. So kind of like the introduction where it's the da-da-da-da-da with all the kind of heavy, quick drum beats and everything. And then you get the pause with that kind of melody which Matt sings. And then it goes into the actual chorus, and then it finishes. Then we get on to the next track, Creating God. So Creating God may, personally to me, be my least favourite track. It just sounds a little weird to me. Reason being, the verse, Matt's singing style is just so weird, and I just can't get used to it. He's done a few kind of different singing styles and patterns and sounds and effects throughout the album, even to this point with the tracks previously. But here it's just too weird. It's just odd, and it doesn't really sound that kind of pleasing or interesting to me. as for the music underneath, you get a few kind of chugs of the guitar, but mostly it's the drums that kind of keep it flowing. The guitars just kind of come in every now and then for a few chugs. Then you get the instruments actually coming into the foreground, actually about halfway into the verse. The pre-chorus is like the best sounding from the whole band, the actual pre-chorus, because you get the typical Avenged sevenfold speed with Matt singing at a quicker pace, and then all the instruments going at the quicker pace. Then you get the actual chorus. Now, when the chorus starts, Matt sounds kind of whiny to me. Just as he kind of says, "We're creating God, Master." It just kind of sounds really whiny. It doesn't sound like soaring or flowing. It seems very whiny the way he is singing. And it's not good. It's very open, and it still sounds kind of sci-fi and very, very alien type of sounding. So it is kind of weird, and I do get the kind of style. It's been kind of whiny. I don't know if he's just trying to sound kind of creepy, kind of alien, kind of sci-fi kind of voice to him, like kind of the character and vibe of the overall album, and he's trying to project that into his voice, but it doesn't really work, at least to me. It sounds a bit whiny to me. The solo starts with the typical kind of holds and everything, and then eventually you get it speeding up, and then it kind of progresses and progresses and progresses with a bit more speed. And the best part, though, is when he stops that, and then it opens up into a beautiful melody, and it's beautiful. It's kind of the melody to what the chorus is, and I know I've just kind of hated on the chorus there just now, but with the lead, it flows very nice, and it's a very nice sounding melodic lead. Probably the best sound I've kind of got from him so far on this album. Because it just kind of sings, it flows very nicely. It's a very beautiful sound that it is. It's got great holds and everything, and it just kind of goes so nicely. And it works very well, which is a shame because obviously it's like one of the better solos, and it's a part I really, really, really like. But the rest of the song is unfortunately just poor. The kind of whine from Matt in the chorus, I do understand why, and it does sound kind of unique and different and alienish, but it doesn't really work personally for me. And as I said, the actual verse, Matt is just singing so weird. I don't know how to explain it. It's just answering the call. That's kind of the effect he's doing. It just sounds so bloody weird. It's just unusual, seriously weird. Pre-chorus is pretty cool though, but it's just a pre-chorus, so it doesn't really last. So moving on to the next track, Angels. So with Angels, we get the first actual melodic track here. It's a very different melody compared to what Avenged has actually done previously. It took me a long time to get into this. It took a while for me to get into the album overall, but once I got into the actual album, it took even longer to get into these melodic tracks, like Angels. It's just very kind of slow and doesn't really elevate to any sort of degree. When it gets to the actual chorus, the kind of guitar seems to fade, and it just seems matte and a kind of spacey effect. And Matt's voice elevates, he does at higher registers, and then it comes back down to the kind of bass and guitar, which it's kind of acoustic to a degree, but it's not full-blown acoustic either. And Matt's voice again sounds very open, like he's out in space or something. And it's just weird and doesn't really go very far. The solo from Sin, again, a very long solo. Sinister always does a pretty decent length solo. Usually it's a very long solo, and then his shorter ones are actually still pretty damn long. But because Sinister does really long solos, a pretty long solo is actually quite short for him. But here it's long. It has a fair bit to it. It is Sinister Gates overall. He does the holds, he does rhythmic parts, he does a bit of a speed, bit of a hold, bit of a bend. But he doesn't get overly quick, as obviously because the song's melodic, so he can't really be shredding all over the place. He puts as much speed as is what's probably acceptable, I'd say, to the song. But mostly it's rhythmic, it has holds and then the bends and things. And then it lasts a while, and then it kind of keeps changing between being rhythmic to a bit more kind of speed to a hold and the bend here, and other sort of techniques and everything thrown in. So the solo, very, very good. And as for the song, as I say, the chorus, the band kind of seems to disappear. It's just like a weird effect, and Matt's voice kind of elevates to high registers. And then as for the actual verses and everything, is just a bassy kind of tone overall, along with the guitars being a bit more brighter than what the bass sounds like, but it is still kind of bass sounding. And then Matt's voice being kind of open, and that is pretty much it for the whole song. It lasts about 5 minutes 41. Now, I do like this song now, but I believe it's basically you need a sense of maturity. And I'm not being rude, because as I say, I didn't like this at the beginning. I expected something very kind of rhythmic, very memorable, very kind of catchy, with a big kind of more anthemic chorus to kind of keep you entertained. But this one, it's just so mellow. So instead of just wanting, I want something where it's just like yes and heartfelt and everything, it's one where you have to kind of sit back and just kind of listen to kind of just the subtlety and everything, and appreciate what's going on, and kind of vibe and sound and structure that they've incorporated into this. And it goes nice, the effects are nice, and then the chorus, the effect is nice, and Matt's voice does have the nice soar and high note to it, and the solo is very nice. It's not one of the best. Obviously, things like Seize the Day or So Far Away, and songs like that, Dear God, even, all brilliant melodics. And Angels doesn't really come close to that, really, to any real degree. But it's still a good track, and different, and requires, as I say, a bit more of a mature mind to appreciate the subtlety of the actual song. That is what I would say in my case, at least. Other people may disagree and just say it's just too dull and boring. I don't think it's a case of maturity. I just think it's boring. And you're fine to have that opinion, but for me, I needed to just kind of accept it for what it was. And that is when I started kind of actually kind of appreciating it to a certain extent. So, moving on from here, next track, Simulation. So Simulation is quite a huge song when you basically think about it. There is so much kind of going on, because the song starts out melodic with keys that are quite bright, but they're not playing quickly. It's just dun 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 as Matt kind of sings in the melodic kind of style. It does kind of build up, and Matt gets a bit kind of more bright to his voice, and the keys get a bit more, add a few more notes here and there, and get a bit brighter along with Matt. Then it calms down again, but obviously it's got the kind of sci-fi big open feel to it, so it's a very open sound, little eerie to an extent, and but it's melodic, it's quite nice, it's quite soothing, even though it's kind of eerie and it's very open and sci-fi sounding again. And then it gets into kind of like the more beefy part of the song, the pre-chorus. The pre-chorus I did not like when I heard the song first. I thought it was really stupid. It's like an army kind of march, kind of like the army marching drum kind of beat, with Matt sort of speaking, but it's still kind of sung, if you get what I mean. The line, you only exist because we allow it, and then after that, Sin comes in with just a few kind of chugs on the guitar. Then it goes into the actual chorus where Matt gets very open in sounding, holds his words, and Sinister Gates goes absolutely bonkers. He goes absolutely insane in the chorus. Like, he's just all over the place. I'm not even going to try and explain what he's doing, because he's just all over the place. He is there and here and over there, then he goes from there to just completely somewhere completely different. He is just unbelievably all over the place in this chorus, which is why it was a bit difficult for me to get into it originally, because it was just so much. Matt's voice is just kind of singing the natural kind of way and everything, and it's open with holds. And then Sinister is just, it's so much going on. So with kind of hearing it first and not just understanding and knowing where he's going and how it sounds, it's just so much for the mind to kind of hold, and it was just a bit much for me. So I kind of took it as actual noise. But then now that I kind of know what he's doing and I can actually hear and understand, and not have to really use a hell of a lot of brain power to kind of just keep up with everywhere he's going, because my brain kind of just blew up the first time. Just like, yeah, I give up. It's incredible, and the contrast to the start, because of that kind of piano, very open, bright kind of sound, going to the kind of drum march to this absolutely bombastic craze of Sinister Gates and everything. It's just completely flipped to completely something completely different to how it starts. And then as the chorus ends, it just goes back into that dun, dun, and it just goes back to the slow, and then that kind of subtle melodic melody build-up. Dun, 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 dun. And with them Matt getting a bit brighter and everything. Then it goes back into that drum march, and then it's just the dan, da, dan, wham, and then just whammy pulls and shred, and then bends and speeding in places, and then just completely whacking the living daylights out of the guitar and everything. Just going absolutely bonkers insane. This is the thing with Sin when he actually does leads in the choruses. He just is all over the place, just like he is just a rabid animal that's just foaming at the mouth. No one's holding them back, and he's just going ballistic, like he's on speed or something. He's just all over the place. But obviously he knows what he's doing. It's not all over the places, and he's just going crazy and not actually playing anything musical. He's just faffing around. Everything works and everything. It's just it's not subtle. It's a lot. If you kind of find it a bit much and everything, I'd say give it a few listens, and eventually you'll kind of understand where it's going, and you don't have to kind of forget, because it's not really that easy to remember when everything's going so quickly and there's a lot to it. It's like a solo what Sinister's doing here. It sounds complicated and there's a lot going on. So if you give it a few listens, and then to the point where it's like stuck in your mind, you can appreciate what Sinister's doing and the technicality to it, and the contrast between that melody towards this aggressive kind of chorus. The lead up to the solo is kind of like a discussion between a doctor and a nurse. The nurse, I would go as far to say, is it's probably Val, which has been featured throughout the Avenged Sevenfold discography. Sometimes she misses an album or so, but usually she's there. She was in Scream, she was in Awaken the Fallen. Don't know if she was in Nightmare or Hail to the King, but this could be her. So she comes in, and they kind of like talking to each other. Matt's doing a very kind of creepy voice, and then Val, again, if it is Val, just a very kind of sexy, kind of nursey kind of sound, like, hello, I've been expecting you. And then Sinister does kind of holds, which is the kind of hold build up to what he's about to do. He likes introducing himself, just like, yeah, I'm coming, get ready. And then he goes into proper shred. It's a very quick solo. It's mostly quick, actually. Obviously, he does take it into a more rhythmic kind of quick instead of just pure shred. And then he goes and does a few halls here and there to break it up, because if you're doing a very shreddy solo, you need to break that up unless you just got a block of just pure speed and nothing else. And pure speed can sound quite repetitive, so you need to make sure to kind of separate that a bit. And Sinister obviously does that. He always does it whenever he goes into a full blown out shred-a-thon. So very fast, but he breaks it up and everything. And then it leads into the kind of eerie kind of sound of Matt. And you get into the end of the song. So the next track now, we have the track called Higher. So Higher starts off with the keys again for that kind of sci-fi alien kind of sound that they're going for. There's like a voice, but it's not really saying anything, but you kind of get that across. And if I'm to explain it and try and understand what they were going for, I'm saying that the sound is like an astronaut coming through the radio. It's muffled and it's a tad faded, but you can easily still hear it. But that's the kind of sound I get. An astronaut coming through the radio as the keys kind of sound out with that. Again, bands never think of these things. It's just basically, we are the band, let's do this, and they think of nothing else. This is unbelievable outside thinking, and I love it because of it. That astronaut over the walkie-talkie thing, the microphone, is a great sound. Like, just that, for some reason, sounds unbelievably amazing. I love that sound. And it's just great to hear something that's I'd never have imagined myself. I do not have the brain power to come up with any of this. Matt eventually comes in, the keys start taking a bit more of a quicker pace. There's a lot of layers to what Matt's doing here. There's a lot of with sounds like gang vocals, all of Matt Shadows. And then as Matt sings, eventually there's gang vocals of Matt harmonizing with himself. While underneath that, there's other lines coming through, then the actual So there's about 4 or 5 layers of Matt Shadows and gang Matt Shadows all over the place, which makes it sound quite kind of huge and layered, as I said. And then as that ends, Matt cuts out, and then the band then come in at a steady pace. And then as it gets into the riff, it's the chugs and then the pause. So the da-da-da-da-dun, and then pause for a bit, do a bit of the beat, and then come back in, da-da-da-da-da, pause, a few beats, then come back in. Matt's voice is very, very open. Here it sounds absolutely great. The effect they put into the voice just makes his voice so open and sounds so grandiose. It's very big and everything. I love the sound of it. The chorus, Sin does a kind of sweep picking sound. It's a very sweeping sound that Sin's doing, but I don't think it's sweep picking. It may be, but I don't think it is. But it's a sweeping kind of motion you get, a very sweeping kind of sound. Kind of bright. It's not a thick sweep. It's a kind of more kind of brighter kind of sweep sound. To the chorus, the lead solo is a great solo. A lot of rhythmic to it with the holds and everything, and then it kind of builds up into the more kind of speed and everything, but it sounds quite big even with the speed. The end of the song kind of slows down a fair bit, and it kind of goes on for a while with not really that much going on, but I love the sound of it, the end of this song. You get female choir singers just going ah ah, and I really like the sound of that. I love hearing them do that. I love that part of the song, and then the kind of elevation and effect they kind of put onto it just makes it sound quite big and amazing. And then Matt comes in, and it kind of sounds like he's in a tank or something. The kind of tank surrounding, and then the effect if you were to try and sing in that. That's the kind of effect I'm getting, and it's the best I can explain it because I am not that good at music to really know all these effects and what they're doing. So the best way I can explain it is he's in like a tank and he's singing, and then the effect of his surroundings that's what's given him this effect. And then he kind of sings along to it, and it's a great effect, and it works really great, and it just flows very nicely with the piano just dun, 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 making everything sound quite bright and uplifting and everything. Not angelic and fairy tale-ish. Obviously, it still sounds kind of sci-fi and alien to a degree. And then the females come back with it, and it's just amazing. They didn't have to think we need the females, but they actually thought of it, and it works absolute wonders. It is brilliant. And then the effect on his voice, did he have to do it? No, his voice is being good enough, but that effect is perfect, and it nails the vibe, the feel, the placement of the song, it changes it up. It is just perfect, and the fact that they just know this and how and what they need is amazing, that they just know it when it's not them doing it and playing it. They just go, it needs this effect, and we need this, and we need this here, and this here, and this here. Things that have never been done before, but they know how it works, because their minds are so gifted with music, and they know what they need, and they know more than what they're capable of playing. They know how everything works, all these effects and things. So it's pretty incredible, I'd say. Now getting near the end of the album now, so the next track is Roman Sky. So Roman Sky, this is again another melodic, just like Angels, but personally I prefer Roman Sky. There just seems to be more to it. And I know I just said for Angels, that it takes a sense of maturity and it doesn't need more, because that's what I usually look for, but because it's subtle, you need a more mature mind to appreciate the subtlety. But Roman Sky is still subtle, because again, I didn't like this track also when I first listened to the album, just like I didn't like any of the tracks. But I got into all the others, but Roman Sky and not Fermi Paradox, Roman Sky and Angels were the tracks that took me the longest to get into. But Roman Sky I got into first before Angels, because the rhythm of the guitars that Cinder's doing and everything is very nice. It's very pleasing. Listen to Matt's voice as he sings is very, very kind of soothing and flows very nicely. And then as the chorus comes, you get violins, I think, actually. You get violins in the chorus, giving it a bit more levity to the song. And Matt's voice kind of rises and then flows with a bit more heftiness about it. The song actually does end up getting a bit bigger. The violins and all of that, and maybe there is more than that, so maybe a bit of an orchestra as well behind that. I'm not too sure. To me, I think it's just violins, but just in case, it may be more than that. But eventually that does kind of come in and gives it a fair bit more levity and grandiosa about it. The solos at the end of the song, that's how the song ends. It's a better melodic again than Angels, I think. It's just got such a nicer flow to it. It just seems way more pleasing and just nicer. It flows very slowly. It sounds nice. The tone's better, I think. And it's just when you go very slowly, it's if you're going very quickly, you're not really focused on just a single note. It's basically the overall bulk of it. How does that sound? As for if you're doing a melodic, it's every one single note is what you're hearing and what you are going to be kind of evaluating. So every single note, you are basically saying, okay, does that one note that is now being kind of rung out, does that sound nice? Because it takes a while for the next note to come in because it kind of flows more melodically. So in Roman Sky, I believe everything is better than Angels because every note just kind of flows better, and that kind of just sings a bit more to me personally than it did in Angels. So that's going to be pretty much it now for melodics. And now we get on to the next track, Fermi Paradox. So Fermi Paradox is going to be a hard one to explain because there is a lot going on. The song starts with a solo, actually from Sinister Gates. So off the bat you get a solo. It's quite intense, and it pulls back in certain areas, but for the most part it's quite intense. Although when Matt actually comes in to start the verse, everything's really open to such an extent that everything seems kind of loose, would be the way I'd say it. There's keys in there, I think there's an orchestra in there. Matt's voice is very, very open. It's really open. And the drums are actually quite tinny and straightforward. But the rest of the band, it's just so open that it kind of gets lost in the mix of absolutely everything. Everything kind of flows and gels together as one. It's quite weird with the keyboard and the orchestra and then the actual other instruments. The drums stand out, and then Matt's voice stands out. Matt's very kind of soothing with the instruments. All the instruments kind of blend and mash into one together, and then the drums, it's like the tinny kind of cymbals by themselves. So it's quite weird. Then you get another lead from Sinister Gates. It's not a lead solo, but it is kind of a proper decent lead because it lasts a short while actually. The lead here, it just kind of breaks it up, so it's mostly just kind of holds and everything. Then you get into female orchestral singing, just and Matt's doing a very creepy singing style, dun 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 dun. It's quite deep and quite kind of aggressive in his delivery. Sounds very nice. It sounds like for some reason I kind of say that style is somewhere hidden in City of Evil, that kind of singing style he's doing, and he's took it out of City of Evil and it's been put here. It may not be in City of Evil at all, but for some reason I just keep thinking City of Evil. For some reason. But I don't actually think it is in City of Evil. I just kind of keep thinking his voice is kind of more closely represented to City of Evil if I were to kind of say where that voice sounds like. And that goes for a while, and then it's broken up by that female orchestral sound, and then he kind of comes back. Then it goes back into that verse, which all the kind of music kind of blends together, and it's so open in sound and everything, and very sci-fi in feel. You get another actual proper solo from Sinister, which is more on the lines of melodic, actually. So it's not actually very intense, it's not really shreddy, it's open, it's got rhythm to it, it sounds very, very nice. This song lasts 6 minutes 31 seconds, and there is a fair bit to this one, and could be the most grand song, which is quite hard to say because, as I say, Simulation is got like a two-sided coin, like one side is completely different to the other side, and then Higher, you got that soothing intro, then you get to the kind of sweeping chorus, and then the outro, you get the kind of different effect on Matt and things. And even the stage, there's a lot going on, but it's all just heavy metal, but a lot going on in heavy metal. As for Fermi Paradox, there's a fair bit going on. So yeah, finally we're getting to the end. So the final track is called Exist. So the final track, Exist. This is the longest song by far in the Avenged Sevenfold catalogue. This is 15 minutes, 39 seconds. That's a fair, decent length of a track. And it takes 7 minutes for Matt Shadows to actually start singing. Now, why is this? What is that first 7 minutes then? What is it? Just nothing but a very, very, very slow build-up? Just a lot of riffing? Or something? What is it? Well, technically it's a lead from Sinister Gates. So, does that mean we have now actually got a 7 minute long lead solo from Sinister Gates, something a lot of people have wanted for years? No, it isn't. But you said it's a lead from Sinister Gates the last 7 minutes. Yes, it is. So it's a lead solo. Not exactly. Well, what the hell am I on about then? Well, basically, to understand what the 7 minutes is and to appreciate it, you actually need to know what it is and why and what Sinister is actually doing, because when you listen to it, it does have technicality to it, but then sometimes it slows down and then it kind of goes all over the place and it's a bit disjointed, and you may think this doesn't really sound that pleasing like an actual flowing solo. It's like broken up into certain bits. So what is that? So you need to kind of get the reason. So basically the song starts off without Sinister. It's kind of a progression, and this eventually leads up to him. And then when he starts, it erupts into sheer speed, and he's just speeding and speeding and speeding and speeding. Then he kind of takes a break and then does some speed here and there. And then at a certain standpoint of time, around 5 minutes, it gets to a more very open sound. And he slows down drastically and then just does a slow lead, which is very, very, very piercing in sound. Now, what's actually going on? Now, Exist, what Sinister is doing, what he is supposed to be doing, because he's supposed to be telling something and showing something through his guitar playing. And what it actually is that he is doing is portraying the Big Bang. That is what this first 7 minutes is. It's the Big Bang. That is what Sinister Gates is supposed to be getting across. So it starts off silent, but with a bit of stuff going on. And then when Sinister comes, it's basically just, he's there, he's shredding ballistically because the bang has happened. And then it kind of obviously slows down. And then there's a bit of speed, which is probably the formation of maybe planets and formations of certain things. And then as it kind of slows down around the 5 minutes to that more kind of melodic, kind of very bright sound, is probably when everything's kind of come apart and it's like the growing of life or something, and trees and their grass and plants and the animals. So it's like life growing instead of the Big Bang, the explosion, and then the kind of growing of the planets, and then a planet here and a planet here, and then the gravitational pulls and everything. Who knows where Sinister is thinking, because you really need to be in the mind of Sinister to know what part is what part. Obviously we know when he starts that is the bang, but who knows when that melody is, if that is actually the creation of life and their plants and things, or if that's something else. So whenever you listen to it, you try to actually have to think, what does this sound like? What could this be in consideration to that Big Bang? So that's the interesting part, and as I say, there's a lot from Sinister. It's very technical, so technically it is a lead solo, but at the same time it just isn't. So, but that is basically it. Them first 7 minutes of all what Sinister Gates is doing, as well as the rest of the band, is they're supposed to be recreating the soundtrack, I would say, to the Big Bang. That is what is going on. And then at 7 minutes, Matt comes in, and then he's singing basically about creation, about life, about existence, really. He said it was his most difficult challenge because obviously lyrically it's a big task. The meaning of life, why, how he came to be, and things like that. So vocally, he sings it very open and everything's very slow and very easy because we're kind of trying to listen to what he has to say. And then that kind of progresses for a while, and there's not much of an elevation. It kind of lasts for a fair bit. And then eventually at the end of the song, well, not really the end of the song because it still goes on for a long time, they have a special guest. I don't know his name. I haven't looked it up. But it's a person who speaks about philosophical things. So basically coming up with books about the meaning of life, and he does discussions with the public and everything. He's in the news at kind of explaining all this thing about science, about God, or not even God, just why we're here, how we're here, and things like that. And there are more stars in the sky than grains of sand on Earth's beaches. How many grains of sand there must be on Earth? But there's still more stars out there. So he says things along this line. And it's kind of spoken, so there's a weird kind of keyboard kind of sound effect going along with him and everything as he kind of speaks this with an effect put on, because if he was to speak and it wouldn't work, so they put an effect on to kind of have it match into the song. But he's a bit quiet, so it's a bit hard to really hear him because the effect kind of muffles him a bit, and the kind of keyboard that kind of flows around also muffles him. So it is very tricky to actually understand what the hell he's actually saying. But it's not really a song to kind of listen to for fun or anything. It's a song which is kind of more kind of interesting to think about. So musically, the Big Bang and where all these kind of things tie in, and what you think Sin's actually thinking about as he plays it, and then lyrically what Matt is discussing, and then the discussion of what's happening. But it's all done musically, so it's kind of more of a lesson, learning kind of thing, and a musical journey as well, but it's not for fun really. So that is kind of what Exist is. And that is basically the end of the album. So overall, this is an unbelievably diverse album. The stage is pure metal, but it goes all over the place. It has massive meaning. Sonic Disposition, you get horns. Goddamn's quite simple, but still got the bit of sci-fi in there. Simulation, it's all the sci-fi and the weird sounds. Higher, there's sci-fi, weird sounds. Fermi Paradox, Exist. It's a very big, massive album where nothing has ever sounded quite like this. And that is why I love it so much, but it's very inaccessible. It's not easily accessible because it is so big and massive, and there's so much going on that you really need to sit down and listen. It's like a musical appreciation. It's not something where you can sit down and easily listen to. That is not the stage. The stage is a very complex album. It takes a few listens. You have to really sit down and think about what you're hearing. You have to think about it. You have to repeat things over and over and over again to get all these subtle pieces and bring them all together. Then you need to accept these new things because these things have not been heard before, so it's unusual. Because it's like, that's not music, this is, I don't know what this is. So you need to get used to that part and aspect also. And with a few listens like I have myself done, I now know how everything flows. I know all these intricate parts and all these little subtleties Sin's doing, all the orchestras and things and vocal lines. So I've now come to understand it and appreciate it, and I don't have to sit and really think about it. So now it is more fun, and I obviously understand how big and grand it is at the same time. But it is musical genius at its peak, really. It's unlike anything, and there's so many bands out there that do so many things. It's amazing that this is so diverse, and the effects and everything, it's so big, so huge, and the lyrical content is just going on about things that are just so beyond simple minds and things. It's just so huge. And obviously Matt's voice is great. The drums are fantastic. Brooks Wackerman is a great guy and a great new drummer for Avenged Sevenfold. Since the Gates is just a phenomenal guitarist, and he just feels, knows the effects, and they just understand songs so well in order to put things in. Rating this, it would be a 10 out of 10, hands down, easily a 10 out of 10, because it is just so big and a musical genius and so different and huge and so many things to listen to. There's so much there for a person. And even today, there's so much. Like, I've grown bored of this album, but the reason for that is I listen to it about 4 or 5 times a day, every single day, for months. So I kind of started getting a bit fed up with it. That's what I do with every Avenged Sevenfold album, because I love Avenged Sevenfold so much. I listen to it multiple times every single day for absolute ages, like months and months. And it gets to the point where I just know it so goddamn well that there's no real reason to listen to it anymore. Kind of ruin it for myself, but it's because I love them so much. And the stage is massive, and a lot of people have given it a lot of respect because of what it is, but they've also, a lot of people have found it very tricky to get into, because you really need to really concentrate and sit down. It's not something you can play in the background. There's too much going on. It'd be just so complicated and hard for your mind to get a hold of, because there's so much there. So yeah, you need to really sit down, listen to it, and then eventually you'll be able to listen to it with ease and not have to really think about it. So that is basically what you have to do. So it's basically my favourite album by them. I personally prefer it over City of Evil. It's just way more diverse and got so much more to it than City of Evil. Still really like City of Evil, still a great album, and 10 out of 10 album. And the album cover as well for the stage is very good. Seeing that Waking the Fallen, it's just the Death Bat with a black background, and then the self-titled is a white background with a Death Bat, and then Hail to the King, it's black background, but the Death Bats are over in a corner, which is ridiculous. So that is pretty much it for this review then. 10 out of 10, the best album, but you really do need to kind of sit and really listen and really concentrate on all the stuff going on, so then you can sit down and actually know what's happening and get your mind wrapped around it, because it's a very complex, very, very full, brimming with stuff album. So yeah, that is pretty much it. So I'm gonna basically leave that there. Thanks for watching.